When you look at the league right now, and maybe the answer to this is a player on a team that doesn't necessarily get the headlines, I point to Paris as a great example for this. When we talk underrated players, especially after this weekend, Katie, who are you pointing to?
GodRx and Wuskin. Absolutely.
Wuskin,
so
really? Wuskin? Because he's getting a lot of love. Like, people are saying he's the best player in the game right now.
So I would say Wuskin in this regard, that he was mediocre, average last year in Black Ops 4. So how he has shot onto the scene and dominated things this year, I think is great for them. So maybe I'll amend that statement and say, by the end of the year, if people aren't consistently talking about Wuskin at all times, then he is underrated. But I would have to go with GodRx then for right now. GodRx is a phenomenal player. He dominates when he has a sniper on the maps. His S&Ds are phenomenal. He's flying around and slaying out everywhere when they're in hard points and when they're in dominations. He is such a smart player, and I think he's done incredible things for Minnesota. So I guess you would have to say, I agree with you about Wuskin. Definitely GodRx is my number one, because he's just been so incredibly phenomenal for that team, and I would want people to talk about him a little bit more than they are.
I know that the Paris coaches, we had a chance to talk with them. They were really talking about the impressive nature of their players. I know Paris isn't necessarily grabbing headlines, like I said, but the likes of Denz and Kismet. Denz's numbers are very impressive, but we're not really talking about these players because Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas, right? There's all these players that are so established, but also so impressive in the league that they don't necessarily get the share of attention, so to speak.
Yeah, there's a spotlight, and that spotlight is usually going to be pointed at the biggest teams in the league, like you just said. And you have teams like Paris who are kind of in the back, like poking their head up and being like, hey guys, hey, we're pretty good, you know? And they're trying to get some of that limelight. And I think they're getting there. They have consistently shown that they are a far better team than anyone expected. Almost everyone across the board put them as the dead last 12 out of 12 team in this league. And they have shown, whether it was Denz, whether it was Kismet, whether it was anyone else, that they are much better than we expected. Kismet, though, I think Paris has some of the same issues Florida has in consistency. When Kismet is on his game, he is untouchable. When he's off his game, he gets run over. There seems to be no middle ground for Kismet, and that's something that concerns me for him, because you can't have such a wild fluctuation map to map, series to series, day to day. But at the same time, Denz, I would also argue that he's an underrated player. Not a great season last year, not really a player anyone talked about, and this year he looks so dominant consistently for that Paris team. But I do hope that we see a little more discussion about them, because of all of the teams, Paris has been the most surprising in how well they've done.
Katie, as we wrap things up here, how excited are you that we get to run the final back in Los Angeles in our very first group play? Could we have scripted that any better?
No, we couldn't, and I'm super excited about that. I'm excited that you get to see Florida try and shake things up a little bit, but realistically, Arda, the grand final in Atlanta was pretty boring. Atlanta just steamrolled Florida, and you look at that and you're like, okay, it's a 3-0. That's the worst case scenario for a grand final. No one wants to see that. I mean, maybe if you support the team that won, then it's cool for you, but it doesn't create a lot of hype necessarily. So unfortunately, I'm happy there's a rematch so soon, but do I think it's going to be another 3-0 or another 3-1? Absolutely. I think Atlanta's going to run them over, because Florida is good, but Atlanta is looking at them from the clouds right now. So we'll see what Florida can do to close that gap next time they play. But unfortunately, I expect a very similar result in favor of it.
No faith in Florida going into that one? Little faith.
No faith so much as just all the faith in Atlanta. They are so strong. They are the most hyper-aggressive team. They are the fastest on the map. They fly around. All of them are slayers, aside from maybe Major Maniac, who's doing the rotations and locking down the hills and getting spawns. So he's kind of removed from a lot of engagements that occur on a map. But unless Florida can step up their aggression to be able to match that out of Atlanta, I think they're just going to get overwhelmed, unfortunately. And that's what you've seen in every team that's played Atlanta. They get overwhelmed because Atlanta is everywhere at once. You kill one of them and another one's around the corner, and then the one you just killed swings back through connector on Gunrunner, and it all goes to hell. So unless you can step it up aggression-wise against Atlanta, it's going to be tough.